Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, and this is Not Just Cute, the podcast, where we discuss all kinds of topics to help bridge the gap that exists between what we know and what we do in early childhood education. We're starting conversations with academics, authors, decision makers, educators, and parents so that together we can improve the quality of early childhood education, while at the same time protecting and respecting the childhood experience. Vanessa Levin has 20 years of classroom experience and a decade of experience at Pre-K Pages, where she mentors other teachers through a variety of resources, including her Teaching Trailblazers program. She's taught her community of pre-K and kindergarten teachers how to teach better, save time, and live more. She's a gifted mentor, and that shines through in her newest book, Teach Smarter: Literacy Strategies for Early Childhood Teachers. It really is like having a trusted advisor ready at the turn of the page. I'm excited to talk with her today about how we can build better professional communities in early childhood education. Not Just Cute is dedicated to making sure that what we know about how children learn and grow aligns with what we do in early childhood environments. The Why We Play letters help communicate that alignment. These 45 parent letters will help you jumpstart important conversations in your learning community about the importance and power of play in your early childhood setting. They'll help parents and administrators see the learning power in splashing in the water table, stacking blocks, and playing house. People don't value what they don't understand. If you want to help parents and colleagues understand the value of play in your classroom, the Why We Play letters were created just for you. Learn more and grab a free sample letter at notjustcute.com/why we play. I'm so excited for you to hear from an outstanding mentor and friend, Vanessa Levin. You can find show notes for this episode at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 47. If you've been wondering about how to build your professional community, as well as how to find a mentor or how to be a better mentor, this episode is definitely for you. Let's jump in. Hi, Vanessa. I'm so excited to talk with you today. You're always so much fun to talk with. And I know we have some really important things to jump into, but I wanted to start out first the way that I usually do and talk a little bit about what you do in the early childhood world and the path that took you there. I know we have some wonderful people in this community that have great ideas and passions for early childhood. And so I love for them to hear from people like you who have taken your passion for serving children and families and are doing amazing things in this world. So I'd love for them to hear a little bit about you and your journey.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And so my journey was basically, I taught public pre-kindergarten for about 20 years. I spent 1 year in Head Start. And then the last couple of years when I was in the school district, I worked in a kind of a supervisory capacity where I, coached and mentored other early childhood teachers. But around that same time, my website Pre-K Pages kind of took off and became its own entity. It's been around since 2001, but it really started taking off around that same time. And so I really liked the global impact that I could have online. So I decided to focus my attention there. And so I have been dedicated to Pre-K Pages and the Teaching Trailblazers since 2011, I believe. And it's been a fantastic journey and one that I wouldn't change for the world, because I love teaching young children, but I also really love helping teachers who are struggling, because I was that teacher, I think we've all been that. Right? That brand new teacher who has no one to turn to. They graduate, you got your diploma and you're so excited and eager to teach. And then you're like, uh-oh.
Now what?
Right. Where's that support system? And I think that the internet has really revolutionized the way that teachers can connect with each other and support each other. And that's kind of what I am passionate about doing now, through a variety of different ways.
And you're so good at it. You're so gifted as a mentor, and it's been fun to watch. I assume maybe I should ask first, when you started Pre-K Pages, it seems like it was more of just, here's what I'm doing, here are activities, here's the what, right? And it's been fun to watch you evolve from my perspective. And it'd be interesting to hear your perspective as well of that evolution to evolve into seeing the deeper need of building that community and providing that mentorship.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, in the beginning, it was just a way for me to share what I was doing. Well, it really started as my classroom website for parents. That's our district.
That's so interesting.
To do. So our district, they told us we had to have a classroom website. This is way back when, like in the 2000 about. And me being the type A perfectionist that I am, I decided to take it upon myself to learn how to create my own classroom website because they weren't doing it fast enough for me.
Of course.
They were like having classes on how to do it like after school started. And I knew from experience that the beginning of the year is not a good time to be learning how to build a website. If you're also a pre-K teacher, as you're going to be exhausted. And so I did it over the summer. And the interesting thing is no parents ever visited that website. So it was one of those district initiatives that kind of fell flat, but Google picked it up. And I started getting questions from people all over the world about teaching pre-K and young children. And so I just started putting things out there, sharing what I was doing, kind of answering their questions. But around about 2010, I realized that just sharing what I was doing was not as helpful as perhaps helping people to do things on their own, right? If you teach someone to fish type of a thing there.
Exactly.
So, so I started exploring, how can I help people on a deeper level, help teachers on a deeper level? How can I help them with their mindset, with their, embracing best practices? Because you can give someone something, but then it's completely up to them to interpret it and to use it and implement it and get the results that you got out of it. And so that's when I started exploring the idea of perhaps creating some type of a thing where I could connect with people. And that's kind of what led me to creating our membership community, which is the Teaching Trailblazers. In that way, I can actually work alongside teachers around the world and mentor and coach them that way, which is what I really wished had existed when I was a new teacher.
Right. I think that's so amazing. And it's so important. Just like you said, that's something that I talk a lot about in the trainings that I've done is we can get so focused as teachers on the what, what am I going to do? What am I going to put in the sensory table? What's coming up next week? And those things are important, but until we really understand the why and the how, it really is secondary. All the what that we do is secondary to knowing why and how we do it. So I love the mission that you have and the way that you're helping teachers. It's so amazing. So I'm curious, with all this experience that you have and being such a great mentor, if you could put that mentor hat on and go back in time to yourself as a brand new teacher, what is some of the advice that you would give yourself as a brand new teacher? What are some of those struggles that you had? And what kind of advice would you have given yourself?
I think the biggest piece of advice I would have given myself is don't spend all your money on school stuff. Because I really spent almost all of my paycheck on buying things for my classroom. And I don't think that was a wise thing to do. I think that I would have been better off not having done that because it just muddies the waters even further, because it's almost like you're looking for the magic pill. So you keep buying stuff, searching for that magic pill to search, to fulfill all the problems that you have, right? To solve all the problems that you have. And that magic pill doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the form of a book or a resource or a bulletin board. It doesn't exist in that way. It's not something that you can buy. And I think that is my best advice, because I see new teachers still doing that today. And I really wish someone had just shaken my shoulders and said, don't spend all your money on that.
It's so true. And it really is tempting, we can just buy this thing. It's an easy fix. It's going to make everything easier, better. I can be that teacher if I just buy this thing, right? It will turn me into that teacher I want to be. But I know even as a professional and even as a parent, when people have asked, if you could fix one thing, or if you could pick one thing in the classroom where your child is going to be. And I've always said, I will take a really good teacher over a really well-equipped classroom any day. You can give a teacher a box and, a bag of rocks, and they will do a great job if they're a really great teacher. And you can give all the supplies in the world to a teacher who's not well prepared, and it's still going to be hard. So it's such a great point that it's not the stuff. Don't spend all your money on the stuff. It's building your skills, but it's also that trust, I think, as well. Trust in the skills that you have. You don't need to buy more stuff.
Absolutely. That's the piece of advice I would have given myself. But to other people, I might say, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, I think that we're comparing often as new teachers. They tend to often compare themselves to some seasoned veterans and say, well, I'm not as good of a teacher as that person is, for whatever reason. And I think that you can't compare chapter 1 of your book to chapter 20 of their book or whatever it is. You know what I mean? You can't compare apples to oranges. And so I think that's a trap that a lot of us as teachers fall into, no matter what grade you teach or what age group you work with or where you work.
Yeah, for sure. And recognizing that, this teacher next to you down the hall has all of these systems and programs and things that they're doing that you're maybe feeling you don't measure up to, but then realizing they've had 7, 10, 20 years to implement those little by little. And like you said, you're on page 1, you're headed in the right direction, and you can aspire to that and learn from that mentor teacher without trying to expect yourself to be where they are with all the experience that they've built immediately.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So generally, as we think about, I guess flipping that question that I just asked, and you are the mentor teacher down the hall, you are for a lot of people, you're that figurative mentor teacher down the hall. And I'm wondering from that experience, if you could talk a little bit about how we as educational communities can do a better job of mentoring and supporting new teachers and each other. I don't think it's even just the new teachers. How can we do a better job of mentoring each other and supporting each other in our educational communities?
Well, one thing I like to think of or think about when it comes to mentoring is that teaching itself in general is a very isolating profession, right? We're in a classroom where with just maybe one other adult all day long in little bodies, and there's not a lot of interaction with other people, especially our colleagues. And I feel like if we have opportunities built into our programs, our systems, whatever, to collaborate more, and not so much forced collaboration, but especially when it comes to new teachers, I really think one of the most helpful things for me would have been to be able to go into a seasoned veteran's classroom and watch that person teach. Now, I'm not saying that I should have copied them, but I should have, been able to then take from that what I could, and not just watching other people teach, but then also being able to collaboratively digest what was seen. Because I found that in my experience, that's the most helpful thing, because sometimes what you're watching, you don't know the nuances behind it. And so one of the things we did when I was in the school district was then to have our new teachers watch somebody teach, right? Somebody who's experienced, and then debrief about what they saw, because what they saw, the new teacher saw, versus what the veteran teacher was teaching, sometimes they were completely different. And so to actually have that opportunity to peel back the layers of the onion and really talk about some nuances of that lesson is super helpful. I think that would have helped me so much, because I was the only teacher of a kindergarten, first grade split class my first year. And there was nobody else in the whole building who taught that grade level. And it was just so completely isolating. And of course, I had student taught, which was great, but I hadn't seen a bunch of other people teach. That's all I had. I had a very narrow perspective. And I think that would have really helped broaden my knowledge base and maybe my imaginary teacher toolbox, to stock it with tips and tricks. And I think that is really important. To see multiple teachers in action is super important for our new teachers.
I think that's a really great tip. I know when I was working at the university lab school, working with student teachers, that was built into the program. We would have pre-conference, and then we would have the day, and then we would have post-conference after. And so it really built in that support, that teaching component of not just seeing other people teaching, but like you said, having the discussions around it so that you can see, oh, this thing that just looked like an incidental moment was really intentional. And I think making time for those conversations takes intentionality itself, right? We don't sit around with tons of extra time. So I think that's a great suggestion, to be able to, like you said, to watch other teachers. I know I've learned so much from watching the mentors in my life, and then having those discussions is such a powerful piece.
Totally.
I think going along with that, I'm curious about building a sense of community. And like you said, it can be really isolating to teach. And I know I've had times as a teacher that I did feel like, I'm in this big school with lots of teachers, but most of the time I'm in here in my classroom by myself with these children doing my thing. And I hope it all works out, right? That everybody else next door and across the hall and down the hall are okay with what I'm doing. And that at some point we see each other, but there are these quick moments. And I don't know that I built a lot of community or felt a lot of that at some points. And you have done an amazing job building this online community that we've talked about. And I know some of those principles are unique to online, but I know you've also built community in your profession building up to this. So I think there are a lot of those principles that are consistent and that you have nurtured throughout all those different roles. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what some of those principles are of how we build community so that we can support each other as educators and learn from each other.
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways to answer that question. I'm going to do one concrete way first. And one of the things that I have had great success with, both in my role in the public school districts and in my role in teaching Trailblazers, is professional book studies. I know that sounds a little maybe out there for some people, but
that's fantastic to me.
It is a great way to kind of collaborate and build a sense of community in a very non-threatening way, because oftentimes we're told, oh, just plan with your team or have team meetings, and that can really quickly get into a comparison game where, oh, she has more ideas than I do and I need to look good to these teachers and that type of thing. But professional book studies, you're talking about the book, right? And so there is no comparison game. We're all looking at this thing. It's a third party, if you will. And we're all focused on this topic at hand in the book. It's an early childhood topic, of course. And then we're having really rich discussions. It's very informal. We're just almost like you would do with a regular book study. I don't know about you, but I have book studies that I attend, for pleasure, with fiction books or whatever, with other people in my community. And they're very relaxing and enjoyable. And at the same time, if you're doing a professional book study, you're actually going to gain some information or some strategies to go along with it. And so I've had really great success with those in building community, because you're coming around something, a common theme, right? And it's not threatening because you're not comparing yourself to the book, right?
Yeah.
And I really think that goes a long way. It can serve as a community building thing, but also at the same time, a professional development activity that has great impact, because you're spending a lot of time with the book and reflecting, and it has so many subtle nuances that teachers can get from it. And I really highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't tried a professional development book study before. It might be a hard sell to your staff, but once they experience a good one, they will ask for more. And it's kind of like if you give a mouse a cookie.
Yeah. Well, and I love that it invites us to come at the profession with an element of curiosity, right? Like you said, if we all come around this book that is new for all of us, and we're all, coming with our questions and our curiosity, it kind of evens it out a little bit to say we're all curious together and coming as equals to discuss this idea and the ideas in this book, and to share our experiences. And I just love bringing that element of curiosity, because I think when we can get curious about what we're doing and about the profession, rather than getting caught into the comparisons, we shift that perspective. I think a book study is a good way to do that. Are there other things that you found as far as, I know in the online world, maybe, I don't know, I was going to say maybe more so in the real life world, but I think it's in the real life world as well. There's, I know you've had to do a lot of work through the area of moderation, right? Of expectations and how we treat each other. And I'm wondering if you have any perspectives on that about it. I think it's some of what we've talked about, the comparison, but also the evolution of how we care for each other and treat one another.
Yeah, totally. I think that, when it comes to working with other people, right? Like I said, our job is so isolating that it's almost like we lose our social skills sometimes. At least I feel like I have.
The irony, right?
Right. Because you're working with little people all day long and you don't have those opportunities to discuss or interact. I know teachers who've told me I have to come home and have a discussion with my spouse because I feel like I haven't really talked with anybody all day because it's just the little people in my classroom and I've had preschool level conversations
right.
all day and I need that interaction in order to regain my sanity. So I feel like that is just a unique thing in our profession. But I think that we also have to, especially in this day and age, to not be judgmental of others, but be encouraging. And I think that's so much easier said than done.
It's true.
Because our first instinct as teachers is to always, oh, that's wrong, right? That thing is wrong. Mm-hmm. But because we want to be right. Teachers want to be right. That's kind of our job, right? Mm-hmm. So we really have to work, I think, a little harder to just be encouraging in whatever ways we can to each other, regardless of how much we might disagree with each other on, the classroom things. I don't know if that makes any sense, Amanda, but I really think that a little bit of encouragement could go a long way. And these are social skills that apply in real life too, not right. just professional life.
No, I think that's so true. And that's something that I've observed, when I bounce into your group, I've noticed where the internet can be really judgmental. And like you said, people jump in very quickly to point out where you're wrong because somehow it makes us feel better about our rightness. And I have seen in your group that especially the people that have been there a while that have learned from you are quick to jump in and say, we're encouraging each other here. And so right. Finding the positives, and even if you disagree, let's at least find the positives or help in any way that we can. And I think that translates in the way that we build up with each other. And when that new teacher is doing things differently than we're doing, that we can say, help me understand a little bit more about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I love this aspect. And just like you said, to be encouraging and focus on that first.
Yeah. And I think we've really found a happy balance in our Trailblazer community because everybody that's there knows that we're there to uplift each other. And even if we see something or read something that we might not agree with, we know how to approach it in a way. And we do that through modeling a lot of the time, because they see myself and our mentors modeling that for them. And it's also a great takeaway for the classroom. Your kids will also take that away if you're doing that in the classroom as well. But we do try really, really hard to make sure that we're modeling that for our teachers, because it's really easy, especially online, to fall into the trap of you're wrong and I am right and here's why, and nobody listens to each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a downfall of the interwebs, shall we say.
For sure. And I think those are all takeaways that apply to school communities as well, especially for people that are in admin positions, directors, that, like you said, that they model for everyone else. Here's how we show respect and encouragement, and to set the tone and really model how it's done. And you've done a beautiful job of exemplifying how others can do that, not only online, but to take it into their other relationships, their other learning communities, and to model that same encouragement and the positive like you said, that we can learn from each other and we don't all have to do it the same way. We're not teaching the same children, so it shouldn't always look exactly the same, but
Right.
that we can encourage each other and find the positives.
I totally agree with you too. The climate of the school is, the tone is set by the leader of the school. And that certainly during my days in public school was the case. I mean, I was in the same building for many years. I mean, I taught in a bunch of different buildings, but in the one particular building where I spent my most time, I think we had 5 different principals while I was there. And it was always the same staff. We had a few newcomers each year, but it was amazing that the tone could change with the leadership. You know, there was one year where it was all catty and, you know, unpleasant. And then there was another year when it was just, or a couple years where it was just so positive and uplifting. And it's the same people, you know, right. The tone is set from the top down, and it's not an easy thing to do, but it definitely can be done.
Mm-hmm. Something to think about for all of us, right? To put out, it's that old message that carries through everything we put out into the world, what we want to see and what we want to experience, and set that tone. Well, I don't want to let you go without mentioning your new book, Teach Smarter, which I just really honestly highly recommend. It's such a great book, so well written. And I think you do such a great job of incorporating your authentic voice. You know, I've had a lot of conversations with you, recorded and otherwise, and I could hear your voice in that book, that same encouraging voice, that same authenticity and genuine sound is the way that the book is written. And it really, as I read over it, I felt like this is like having a mentor teacher in your back pocket, you know, carried around with you whenever you want. And it touches on a lot of general teaching principles, but it's really particularly focused on early literacy. And so I was wondering if you could just, in this last bit of time that we have, talk a little bit about some of those common misconceptions around early literacy that not only new teachers have, but some experienced teachers are still holding on to as well.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words. That means the world to me. And that's exactly what I was going for in the book, was to really come at it from a mentorship perspective, and that this is not a judgment or a competition, that this is all about the children and what we can do to help teach the way they learn. I think that's like my main thing. But when it comes to misconceptions, I think one of the biggest ones in early literacy or emergent literacy is that learning is linear. You know, that first we learn to identify the letters of the alphabet, then we learn the sounds, then we learn the sight words, and then we read. And in fact, that is absolutely not how young children learn. They don't learn in a linear way from point A to point Z. They're all over the place all the time, and they all learn differently. Each one is a complete individual. And so that's what makes teaching so difficult. Mm-hmm. If they were all the same, and we could teach in a linear fashion. If every child in front of us was the same year after year after year, right? Like some kind of a factory, that would work. But it doesn't when it comes, especially when it comes to teaching young children those foundational early literacy skills that we know are crucial to their future success as readers. So I think that the most common misconception would be that learning emergent literacy skills is a linear process, when in fact, all of these things are taking place at the same time, or at different rates, at least for each child.
And they're circling back. And that's why repetition is so important, right? That we did cover this a month ago, but we're still going to bring that back in here, and that different children, like you said, are picking up different things at different times and different rates. And so it's this, you know, while we do have to build foundations, that's obvious, but it's this swirling process, right? That keeps spiraling through.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I am so excited to watch all of the work that you've been doing and the amazing things that you're putting out into the world. And just like you said, that as we encourage other people, it lifts us all together. And you've done such an amazing job of lifting so many educators around the world. And I just hats off to you for the work that you've done and that you continue to do. It's so exciting to watch all these new things you're putting into the world. So thank you for taking some time to share some of that with us here on the podcast today.
And thank you for having me. It was always a pleasure to talk with you, and an honor to be here on the podcast with you today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks again for listening to Not Just Cute, the podcast. You can find show notes at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 47. There, you'll find links to pre-K pages as well as Vanessa's new book, Teach Smarter, and her group, The Teaching Tribe, along with other interesting tidbits addressed in this episode. Show notes will also share a link to the Why We Play letters, so you can check those out and download the free sample letter. I'm Amanda Morgan. You can read more on my blog and sign up for the Not Just Cute newsletter at notjustcute.com. And follow me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/notjustcute. You can also find me on Instagram, so follow me there at Amanda_notjustcute. Thanks for listening today, and as always, thank you for standing up for children and for childhood.